What stands out to me is the Russian allegation that the Ukrainians shot down a plane that contained Ukrainian POWs. The Ukrainian military would have to be incredibly incompetent to shoot down a cargo plane containing Ukrainian POWs. Yes, you can't really know on which planes the other side puts your POWs, but you have a good idea of where they are going if they're going to be exchanged, and you wouldn't shoot down a plane that was going to the location where you're expecting to get your POWs back. So something doesn't really stack up in the Russian story.
A Russian plane with 65 captured Ukrainian military on board has crashed in the southern Belgorod region near Ukraine. Russia's Ministry of Defense said they were on the plane heading to the area for a prisoner exchange. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has held a press conference following the crash.
I would like to start with questions and answers, but I have to start with another fact of the use of terrorist methods by the Kyiv regime. On the morning of January 24, Moscow time, a terrorist act was committed, as a result of which a Russian transport plane was shot down in the Belgorod region.
Ukraine's military intelligence say there isn't reliable information about who was on board, claiming the plane was actually carrying missiles, but they also haven't ruled out that they shot the plane down. Well, joining me now, one of our resident Russia watchers, Elisabeth Braw. She's Senior Associate Fellow at the think tank Atlantic Council. Good evening, Elisabeth.
Good evening.
Conflicting information here. Are we any closer to knowing what happened?
We are not, although it seems clear by now that some of the POWs that the Russians have said were on that flight had already been exchanged earlier this month. So at least one part of what the Russian government says appears not to be true. And then we have also online sleuths who are the best helpers these days when the Russian government says something, or when any government says something. They have also been tracking this flight and come up with a completely different story than what the Kremlin presented.
So just to be clear, Russia accuses Ukraine of deliberately shooting down the plane. Media in Kyiv say that sources say the Ukrainian military said the plane had been carrying missiles. In terms of Zelensky, President Zelensky and the Ukrainian government, we've heard nothing.
We have not. And the difficulty when anything happens in this war is that the Russian side will say something, the Ukrainian side will say something, and the assumption that we all have to make is that what the Russians say in particular has to be taken with a grain of salt, indeed cannot be trusted as it stands. So you always have to investigate whatever it is the Russians say. And I think everybody remembers the plane crash involving the founder and leader of the Wagner Group. There was enormous mystery to what happened
Prigozhin.
to that plane. Exactly, Prigozhin. There was enormous mystery regarding what happened to that plane, and we still don't really know, but we know that he is dead. We do know that for sure now. And so when it comes to this aircraft, the Russians say it was carrying Ukrainian POWs on their way to being exchanged, whereas online sleuths are saying that in fact it was coming from Iran, and obviously it wouldn't be carrying Ukrainian POWs from Iran, it would be carrying weapons from Iran. So these are two completely different narratives.
Yeah.
And as you say, the Ukrainian military and the Ukrainian government hasn't said very much at all about this.
Goodness me. Well, Iran thrown into this, and look, there have been plenty of discussions both here and across the media about Iran's role in conflict at the moment, further into the Middle East as well. We do know that a prisoner exchange was due to take place. A spokesperson for the Ukrainian military intelligence confirmed that there was an exchange due to take place today, but we obviously can't say that there were prisoners of war aboard the plane. Would that be the usual? I mean, is there anything unusual that sort of sticks out to you in this story, Elisabeth, when you've been sort of trying to join up some of the dots on it?
I think what stands out to me is the Russian allegation that the Ukrainians shot down a plane that contained Ukrainian POWs. The Ukrainian military would have to be incredibly incompetent to shoot down a cargo plane containing Ukrainian POWs. Yes, you can't really know on which planes the other side puts your POWs, but you have a good idea of where they are going if they're going to be exchanged, and you wouldn't shoot down a plane that was going to the location where you're expecting to get your POWs back. So something doesn't really stack up in the Russian story. But with this, as with most aspects of this war and most statements that come out of the Russian Ministry of Defense, and indeed every other ministry, it's an unfortunate reality that you have to investigate on your own, or various fact-checking organizations have to investigate, because you can't trust what it is they put out. And sometimes it may be true, but we've reached the point where you can't assume that
can't rely on it. And just briefly before you go, Elisabeth, can we get your thoughts on the story that's headlining on the Times Online at the moment? The head of the army says that UK civilians need to be trained and equipped to form a citizen army of tens of thousands of people in case Britain's dragged into war. That is because our the levels of trying to get people into our armed forces are so poor at the moment. We are heavily depleted in terms of armed forces personnel. What do you make of the idea of a citizen army? Do you agree that the UK needs to think about an approach like that?
Oh, I absolutely agree. And General Saunders is so right to bring this up. And not just because the UK armed forces are depleted at the moment. Under any circumstance, it is good to involve the citizenry in all kinds of functions in helping keep the country safe. It is ridiculous to think that the only people who should be involved in keeping the country safe are the people wearing uniform, being paid to do so. We all have a role to play. And if you look at the countries that are really good at defending themselves, for example, Finland or Sweden during the Cold War, they all involved the citizenry, and there were various opportunities. There are various opportunities for people to get involved. Opportunities involving weapons, no weapons, and every iteration of specialization you can imagine. It's a great way to do something for society, to engage with fellow citizens, and you also contribute to the larger mission, really, which is to keep the country safe.
Really interesting. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Elisabeth Braw, one of our Russia Watchers, Senior Associate Fellow at the Atlantic Council. Good to speak to you again, Elisabeth. Thank you.